Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Cox. I'm a member of the Net Capital team. Let's allow one moment for everyone to get settled in. Thanks. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again. Today, I'm excited to welcome Leonard S. Johnson, also goes by LS, the founder and CEO of Artificial Intelligence Economic Development Corporation, or AIEDC. As always, this company is actively raising capital on the Net Capital platform. I just added that link into the chat. And before we dive in, let's do a few quick housekeeping items. Please do use the Q&A feature built into Zoom. I know there's also a chat feature, but Q&A makes it so much easier to track all the questions. I want to get to as many of them as possible. And please do ask your questions. We want to keep this interactive and engaging, and I do love getting the questions directly from the participants. So with all that being said, please join me in welcoming AIEDC to the stage. Come on in, LS. Tell us about what you're building with AIEDC.
Okay, Eric. So what we're building is a 5G mobile app maker with machine learning to help small and mid-sized businesses create their own mobile apps on iOS or Android with no code or low code. And that's just the front end. The back end will also utilize artificial intelligence and eventually artificial general intelligence to help them do forecasts of economic trends and AI data to help small and mid-sized businesses sort of predict the churn rate for their customers, as well as some of these hiccups that have been occurring or tailwinds with COVID and disruptions where economic data keeps fluctuating.
And I love it because you start us off with kind of the really accessible feature, which is the low-code mobile app building. But there's so much advanced technology in the background, and that really comes from your strength as an artificial intelligence expert with your experience at Stanford. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we can go into some of the rest of the team as well?
Yes. So my background is I did my post-grad work in decision and probability theory at Stanford under Professor Ron Howard, who's now retired. He was at Stanford for 30 years, sort of led decision analysis, decision quality, probability, came from MIT at the School of Engineering. And so Ron is considered to be the father of decision quality, which is basically how humans make decisions. And we're utilizing that with probability theory to go into training of how machines make decisions and utilizing probability for AI. I'm also getting a PhD in artificial intelligence as well, and to further that. The other thing, though, is my team, and going into my team members, my CTO is the head of computer science at Lowe's Technical University, and also an individual person that's been senior in the brain-computer interface, human-computer interaction, and computer science, which is also AI. My other CSO, Chief Software Officer, is a computer science, let's say, probabilistic and inference professor, as well as also being, my CSO as well, to be able to do that back end. So we're able to look at data from all different kind of levels. My chairman of the board is Dr. Alexander Naraki. He is the former program director for NASA, as well as the Canadian Space Agency. And he led a team of 1,200 engineers that actually just sent the space station, that built the International Space Station. That's currently in space, where Elon Musk has been sending SpaceX rockets to. My other board member is the head of global machine learning technical lead at Amazon Web Services. That's AWS. And AWS is where Amazon makes all of its money, or Jeff Bezos makes all of his money. And he's also the founder of the Global Partnership Network at AWS. And then my other last advisory board member, is a chief scientist for AGI Laboratory. So we're pretty heavily stacked as far as a brain trust to be able to build this out and continue developing.
You certainly are, certainly are. And with all that power, you're going to need it, right? Because you're addressing a significant problem. Can you tell us, both on the mobile app development standpoint and on the artificial intelligence and really the economic development component, what is the problem that these small and medium-sized businesses are facing?
Okay, so the main problem has been, and this I think will continue, is the shutdowns throughout, the shutdowns and the disruption for COVID as a more urgent problem. But we're also heading into a world of AI where we're going to go touchless, even I believe, prior to COVID, where it's just going to be such as something that Amazon's rolling out, which is a more touchless interaction component, and allowing small and mid-sized businesses create their own local market where they directly communicate to their customers, take transactions, complete the whole protocol cycle without necessarily sending them to Facebook or through a third-party app, which has been big for a lot of platforms, but a lot of local businesses, if I can, if a small business that can communicate with me, let's say that I want to go get a pizza or I need some CPA services or something. If I have that app on my phone, my mobile phone that they've created, they can push messages to me, discounts directly to me, and keep me coming back, keep me transacting. They can also do prepay services. So you don't have to wait for me to walk into the restaurant. I could just use the app, or like Starbucks app, and one of the things to footnote this quickly, Starbucks revenue increased, I think almost 30 to 40% since when they rolled out their app, just because of pre-purchases before getting to Starbucks, before getting to the location. So if you can facilitate, part of this is a little fintech, but if you can facilitate that process and be able to transact that service with the app, and the main thing is communicate directly with your own customer base. It's not acquire the new customer. Customer acquisition is one thing. Communicating directly with that customer in a frictionless possible way, or the least friction. And friction can sometimes be through. You could say, well, why don't they just get a website? These days people don't want to. They have to click on a website, dial in a web URL, keep it as a tag list. It's just better for me to have an app and touch. It's a touchless world where I can touch a couple buttons and complete a transaction.
No, I appreciate that on the app side, and then on the economic development component, because I know you have a lot of services about predicting trends and building out economic growth. On the economic development standpoint, this is a massive problem. What exactly is it?
Well, part of it is twofold. Okay, so when we look at economics, there's the macro trends and the micro trends. And some of it will include, and that's my study, part of my PhD is the emphasis of economics. I've written a book about that. The most recent book happens to be, the Bank for International Deals, how cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence are creating a new economic order, when I predicted back then in 2017 that Bitcoin would be a great transaction. And at that time, it was only trading about $800 or so. So I was able to factor in that economics trends, being that what's going on in our cycle is a demographic change. We're changing our purchasing habits. So applying the same economic models that the Federal Reserve utilizing, taking that large data set, crunching it, and then going through the local community to be able to apply it. Let's say if it's San Francisco, or if it's Oakland, or if it's Los Angeles, apply it in that small and regional area to be able to look at those economic purchasing trends. Not just consumer purchasing, not simply mortgage purchases or homes, but to be able to predict and give some churn prediction to these small and mid-sized businesses, depending which vertical they're in. If it's insurance, restaurants, hotels, things of that nature, just like looking at the larger data sets that the Federal Reserve do. We can do the same thing.
And everybody should hop on and get their copy. I think I got mine from Amazon, so I had to bring up the show and tell here. But a great read.
Thank you very much on that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I don't think everybody else's will be signed, but they can pursue you after the Zoom and see if they can get that signed. So thank you for breaking down the big problem around the kind of economic growth piece. So tell us, what is the AIEDC solution? I know there's multiple pieces to it, multiple service offerings, but let's give us the big picture. What are some of the solutions that you provide for this, not only the mobile app development, but the economic development component as well?
Yeah, so I was touching a little bit upon that when you were going to get the book. So some of that is churn prediction. Also economic, eventually, once we build this out, economic forecast. So a lot of times, and I'll kind of just reiterate it quickly, when the Federal Reserve says we're going to raise or lower interest rates, that affects the banking index of what people can borrow money and the rate that they can borrow the money at. Utilizing that data, that large data set, but bringing it down to the local levels, such as Los Angeles specifically, or an area in Los Angeles, okay, and look at that economic trends to be able to tell them to forecast sort of what headwinds to look for versus tailwinds. And that's a term that a lot of Wall Street and top level executives use, and we're trying to bring it down to we're democratizing that data so that the small and mid-sized business person can benefit as well. Similar to like a McKinsey and company report, but we're using data, but it's going to give prediction and AI in sort of a subscription model for our business customers.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I did hop out, so I know you covered it a little bit, but I wanted to take a deeper dive, and I wanted to make sure I could show that for people. So you mentioned for sure the business model. So how does AIEDC make money in these different service offerings?
So one of the service offerings will be, the first is the mobile app maker, which will have a fee attached to that, and sort of a one-time ongoing small fee monthly. And the other ones will be the subscription services. Because one of the big things, so artificial intelligence as a service is projected to be a $5 trillion, that's with a T, $1 trillion industry. Some were saying in 2026, I think it'll be around 2024 because of COVID now. So in the next couple of years, it's going to accelerate. We've all heard of software as a service, but what's coming is artificial intelligence as a service. Just like, and part of that is why a lot of cloud companies are being purchased now, left and right, because as a service, you'll run that cloud in sort of a cloud environment like AWS. But there's going to be a lot more artificial intelligence as a service that's going to be spreading, and that's going to be quite a significant, I think, pie of economic globally. This is why I think China's rushing into AI, and Russia and all the other countries that can. So as a service model, we'll have a subscription-based service model similar to Prime, Amazon Prime, where you pay the monthly or the yearly, and then you buy additional services on top of that. And our initial services will be always focused on the side of economics. First of all, two data points. One is allowing a touchless friction transaction so that they can communicate with their customers, and then giving them that economic data, which is so important, so that they can predict these headwinds that are coming forward. It's one thing to react. It's much better, especially if anyone in business will tell you, to be proactive and to know what's coming and not try to scurry once something has happened. And I think COVID's taught people a lot of that.
No, that's true. COVID really has enlightened people the importance of being ahead of the curve, predicting trends. So just to be clear, when you talk about this monthly service, a lot of these companies, small and medium-sized businesses, don't have the money or the team or the capability to build out their own apps with artificial intelligence and cloud-based systems. But what you offer then is for a reasonable monthly fee, they can just use your already built out system, and you kind of just model it and design it so that it fits for these small and medium-sized businesses. Am I thinking about that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and we can customize so think of the front end of the app as the front door to a home, and what's inside the house, what's going on in the house, or how many rooms are in the house is where they decide how many rooms they want to build out the house as far as data sets. What do they want to focus on? So some of that is the churn prediction, knowing how many customers you might lose. Again, that gives you the headwinds. Also knowing what the economic data is and what's trending. So trends reports utilizing artificial intelligence, I think, will really help small to mid-sized businesses, because the top Fortune 100 or Fortune 1000 companies have access to this. They have the big McKinsey reports, and they have this team and the staff to go through and filter through these 200, 300 pages data of economics. Small and mid-sized businesses doesn't do that. And this is also from a personal, I grew up I came from a family without means. So I understand what it's like to build something from the ground up and have that knowledge. And when you have that knowledge is a very powerful thing.
it does remind me of like kind of larger institutions' ability to manage the regulatory burden more effectively than smaller institutions. And you're saying kind of similarly, these small and medium-sized businesses, the biggest and best businesses outperformed during the pandemic. They saw sizable increases in their valuations during the pandemic if you could get ahead of it, predict trends, and adapt accordingly. So you're trying to bring that type of agility to small and medium-sized businesses through these types of reports and services. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing. Continuing along here, and please do remember, love seeing the participants in here. Continue to use the Q&A. I have a couple more kind of planned questions, but I do want to go. I do want to get to your guys' questions as well, and they're continuing to come in. And so, in just a moment, I'm going to get to the competition question that just came up. But before we do that, how large is the market for this? What is AI as a service going to look like? And I know you touched on that, but how big is this market overall?
Well, the market right now is projected, as I said a little earlier, to be about $5.5 trillion. And that'll be broken down. Those are guesstimates or estimates that's been out, from several industry leaders. But if you look at, and that's not part of, now this is interesting too, part of AI as a service and what we're doing with the mobile app is to make sure it's 5G enabled. Verizon, as a side note, just did a subscription to raise $100 billion with a bond, and it was oversubscribed, I think, in 2 days, because 5G will enable AI faster, faster output input, just because of its texture of 5G and what it's capable of. So T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, they're all rushing for 5G because they also know where AI as a service is going, because you're going to iterate and send those input and outputs to the services there. Gotcha.
And then a follow-up question to the market size. How much of that total $5 trillion market do you think AIEDC might be able to capture?
Well, I think if we're, and I like to be conservative, and there's no guarantees, of course, but I think if God is with us and luck, I always say God first and luck, this could be, we could be valued, if we pick up enough customers in a couple of years, it could be valued easily at $100 million, doing about, 20% of that in revenue. In about 2 to 5 years. So let's say a 2 to 5 year plan, and that can also include the exit, because I think investors are always like, okay, what's my turnaround? So that could look like we might do an IPO or spec if they're still popular and it's reasonable and the board deems appropriate, a spec offering. But also we will probably be, we might be bought out. I mean, I do have a board member from AWS. So, when you look at that, but getting in that particular space, as far as the Investors Place recommended us as a buy a couple of months ago. And they said, because the main thing was we had a good solution, but they stated that small business is the lifeblood of the US economy. So everyone overlooks that. It's a lot of little purchases and a lot of little small businesses adding up as an aggregate. If we can capture a significant size of that market, we could just be way ahead of the game.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for addressing that head on. And I will circle back if we have time to more potential exit strategies towards the end. But thanks for kind of alluding to that now. And questions coming in here on the competitive landscape. So what is the competition? How is your offering better or more unique to the alternatives available? Thanks for that question.
Well, as far as direct competition, there are a few other services or market players that are entering the market with sort of no-code, low-code app solutions. That's looking to be a significant market in the next 3 to 5 years as well. However, there isn't a lot of them that has artificial intelligence as a service on the back end. Now, this is where we go to sort of the holy grail. We and my company, own the patents, okay? Service mark, trademarks, and patents to mine machine intelligence neural network database. So that's a registered trademark with the USPTO, just like McDonald's is or Coca-Cola. And that stands for Machine Intelligence Neural Network Database. We also own the 2 algorithms which will process that, which these algorithms, which are still registered with the patent office as well, are being able to separate us or defense us against other competitions. Because at the end of the day, someone can kind of mimic or copy the service, but then they have to have that unique sort of branding ability and patent ability. This is how Apple has gotten as big as they have over the years. So that sort of puts us in a differentiated category. And in addition, the team to be able to produce artificial intelligence at scale, and then offer it to the small and mid-sized business market. So there are people entering the space sort of as apps solutions or API solutions, but they don't have sort of patents behind them or trademarks or service marks, which ours are specifically in the financial services area, to be able to do that economic data prediction and so forth.
No, that's important. And whenever I talk about competitive analysis, I like to pull out defensibility and IP as a standalone topic. So can we actually dig a little deeper into, and without giving up too much of the secret sauce, what when it comes to these algorithms, what is it that is so special about these algorithms and in predicting trends and market volatility, as opposed to other potential sources of like predictive analytics?
Well, yeah, if you look at something that's defensible, I think at the end of the day, and I'm really saying it's like the whole. I guess the best analogy is the Samsung Apple lawsuit that they had several years ago, and they were suing each other because the phones almost looked identical. But Apple, I think, yielded and won. That they proved that they were first in the market, that this was an infringement on their patent, and our algorithms, the way we uniquely do it. But I want to say this from an engineering standpoint, that is, someone can try to get to the end goal, and they might not take the same path or road we do. It might be similar, but if they infringe on our patents, we will definitely go after them legally. And these particular algorithms are separate. Like one of the algorithms is intangible assets is greater than money supply, therefore intellectual capital plus artificial intelligence equals wealth. Around that sort of branding algorithm and the data structure around that, which will always equate to what we're building out, it sort of helps us from an engineering standpoint and a defense standpoint to sort of have those secret sauces all wrapped into sort of a bow. I mean, the best way I could kind of say it is Oracle, people may not know, but Oracle and AWS operate differently cloud services. Google, Oracle, and AWS, Amazon Web Services, are all in the cloud business. They all offer the same thing, but they do it differently and uniquely with different formulas, which makes the company so valuable. That's why a lot of these two of those companies, or even Oracle, they're valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, not trillions. That's why. And I'm trying to just simplify without doing too much of the math, but because I'm breaking it down. At the end of the day, it's like, you could say like, well, I need to know exactly what you're doing. But if you look at literally Google offers a cloud service, so does AWS, and so does Oracle. They all offer cloud services, but their formulas behind it is what's defensible for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually is a really kind of nice reminder that we're about the halfway mark here. I like to hop in and remind people, as always, you can go to netcapital.com and invest in these companies. I added a link directly into the chat, or you can go to netcapital.com and search AIEDC, or netcapital.com/companies/artificial intelligence economic development corporation. So do feel free to hop over there and check that out. And if you're interested, you can invest. I want to take a step back now for a second and talk about some of the progress that you've already made, and that'll kind of help set us up to where do you think AIEDC is going in the future. So I know you have this multi-year partnership agreement with Lodz University of Technology, part of the alma mater and support system of your CTO. Tell us more about what that brings to AIEDC and how you were able to structure that deal.
Oh, well, then that one is intriguing because that's on the level, thank you, Eric, that's on the level of what most people don't know is parts of Europe, and I did my undergrad work in Europe, but so that school is equivalent to MIT in the United States. And if you can get, and I did my postgrad at Stanford, if a startup can get a partnership with Stanford, the university, not because a lot of the alumni in Silicon Valley come out of Stanford like myself, but to actually get a partnership with Stanford for artificial intelligence development, which we are able to do. And we're also able to even offer it to our customers coming in the future. So we will be able to do custom AI, not just limited to what AIEDC does. So let's say someone says, I want to create an artificial intelligent robot. And, can AIEDC help, sort of source that for me. Under our partnership with Lowe's, we could be that provider. And that is a multi-year relationship going back. It's also my chairman's alma mater as well. So we've got a multi-year relationship. I was communicating with the president of the university or the chancellor as the top person. And we did that with COVID over several times. We were planning to meet in person. There's a press release on that. I think it's disclosed at least on our page on Net Capital. But that took some work, and it was a great significant win. Because what you're talking about is President Biden just talked about AI needs to be R&D, research and development. That school is one of the top universities in Europe for research and development and the output that they put out there. They've been around since about 1945.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to really appreciate the technological capacity of that university, and I think fewer Americans do than Europeans, just by nature of the geographics. And so that's an awesome partnership. You also have a partnership with Startup Grind and Google for Startups. Tell me, what does that provide for AIEDC, and how are you able to structure that?
So that provides sort of to do a touch points for small and mid-sized businesses that are emerging or trying to take on what I call digitization. We are also working on other partnerships with the National Diversity Coalition, I'm a member of the Asian Business Association of Orange County. There's another partnership with the Asian Association I'm working on. So what we're doing is doing partnerships, growth through partnerships and strategic relationships, in addition to just traditional customer acquisition, which once the product is rolled out and we're able to be successful with closing out this round, we can at least be able to, at the very least, sketch out or almost have an MVP, minimum viable product, or at least the first iteration of that, and then continuing additional maybe raises if needed to build that out and start rolling it out to customers and getting that out there. So that has a lot of groundwork. When you look at partnerships, you can sort of, one thing is to develop a product or space, another one is get it in customers' hands. And we can do that through partnerships in addition to customer acquisition.
Absolutely. And so, that's kind of some of the progress and successes that you've been able to accomplish up to date. And then tell us, what does the future hold? I know you mentioned, trying to get to a certain revenue mark in the next 3 to 5 years. That's not actually what I'm asking here. I'm asking, big picture, where do you see AI as a service going? Where do you see AIEDC's service offerings expanding? Are there different industries, geographic locations? What are the next couple of years have in store for AIEDC? And of course, this is speculative because we're talking about the future, so no guarantees.
Yeah, speculative, no guarantees. I think where AI as a service is going, and as far as I think what seismic shifts are going to occur is the global economy, and specifically the US economy, is going to go more toward a service-based versus a consumption-based economy. COVID has accelerated that. And what I mean by consumption, we'll still make purchases and so forth, but we won't go out to Costco every other day and do mass purchases. We'll make them strategic, like during the pandemic and COVID, people would buy more food and so forth. So as a service, and just to hint on that, Facebook is trying to get somewhat in this space with, I think, Shopify and others. They see that trend that we're going to go sort of more into services, A to B direction locally. But it could, I think the company, as I stated earlier, could be valued at about 100 million or so or more within the next 3 to 5 years, given that level, and continue to operate the way it does. We're always in the interest of our shareholders and our own operation. So I've had business experience. I'm greater than 42 years old. So I'm not looking to work for someone else. So if the company, and I have that business experience of 25 plus years in business development, finance, operations, now IT and tech, so we could operate this company very well. And you look at some companies in sometimes if the horizontal market is large enough and you just go through the vertical iterations, such as like the alphabet, the sky can really be the limit. You can just continue to expand and grow and sort of have that niche market, which our niche market would be sort of focused on the small, because that's where my heart is, the small and mid-sized businesses. I think it helps families and it helps get a lot of local people off the ground versus the giant entities out there.
Yeah, and we've discussed a little bit, kind of productivity, efficiency, consumer spending. I mean, we kind of go full economic nerd sometimes when we chat, but and I know you're targeting small and medium-sized businesses, but there's a real application for municipalities here potentially down the line. Can you talk a little bit about what you think municipalities can get from this AI as a service, and
Oh,
what is
yes. Oh, thank you,
and,
Eric.
yeah, and what is it about the future that you see, the trends that you see around consumer spending and productivity, specifically that could make this attractive for municipalities?
Oh, wow. So yeah, so thank you for that. I was in the private sector. So there's going to be a whole convergence of especially local municipalities, just like with small and mid-sized businesses. It doesn't have to be at the federal level. It can literally be at the local level. I'm talking your local city hall and so forth. They definitely need digitization. I mean, anyone will tell you, we just look at the DMV. Okay, so I mean, when you're talking about AI and services and digitization and automation, there's a lot of appetite for that. And our sector would be the way I think is the bottom up. So we would look to go toward the smaller, or the municipalities and cities versus trying to go to the federal government, as an example. I mean, wouldn't be opposed to it as a client, but these local municipalities really could need help for AI as a service, for automation, and the predictions can go both ways, because a lot of times economics, they currently would take their real estate. That's how they count their revenue. It's through real estate transactions and taxes on real estate and consumption. But COVID has disrupted that completely. Commercial real estate is down. It's been, I mean, commercial, not residential. Commercial real estate's down because of the pandemic, and so a lot of these cities are hurting. And this was also in the last bill, I think, when Trump was leaving office. I think it's part of Biden's bill as well. Is try how to give some money back to local municipalities, because they've really got taken a big punch in the arm from the pandemic, and their revenue models were on transactions that it just brought to a halt. So I think going forward, they're going to need some of that prediction forecast of economic data at the smaller level to be able to have their meetings and run their cities more efficiently. But this goes in line with smart cities and also the green environment. You're really going to see a world in a few years where things were, edge computing, mobile devices will talk to each other. We're making a 5G mobile app maker now, but it can be reduced to go to your wristwatch when your phone's out there, when we're really at that edge computing and doing the data from there. And this is where the world's going to be. It's going to be a smart city grid. I think that's part of the infrastructure bill that they're looking to pass in Congress.
And how do you see this new age of automation and the way that it affects the workforce really impacting that economic growth? And how do you think AIEDC, again, at that municipal level, will be important in allowing municipalities to still grow economically, even as we continue to implement more and more automation and phase out different populations in the workforce?
Well, because one of the things, and this has always been a big question, right? And it comes up with AI ethics. Number one, in AI ethics, make sure what you're building is ethical and it doesn't become Skynet, okay? If it's AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And I think we've got prudent things in place for that. And I think there's a lot of AI scientists that are doing this and helping. The other side of that equation is the human element, like the jobs. And this has come up before, and I believe America and the world is at the turning point, like with the Industrial Revolution. When the horse and buggy or horse and wagon was around for many years, and Ford was one of them, but there was automobiles and the combustible engine started iterating. People thought that was the end of the world, because the whole egalitarian, our economy worked off of John, you'd go to church and he'd be on his horse and, he'd get his like hay and stuff. And that's how the world moved. But we were able to transfer those jobs. And I do think we're going to get to a world of a shift like that, where there will be more jobs coming, but it won't be in my opinion solely, it won't be the 40-hour work week. It'll be maybe a 2 to 3 day work week, and you'll do different projects. But this is the beauty. And a lot of people are doing it already. If you retrain certain skill forces and people get more data scientists, they don't have to work for one entity exclusively. they can work for 4 or 5 companies. Like Zoom has, I think, introduced a whole new world, digitization that people couldn't envision. Because now all the Google said that I think they're selling several of their buildings, and I believe it was Google that they said the employees never have to come back if they don't want to, ever to the office. Okay, so when you look at that, you're able to really, maybe Google may not like their employees having 3 jobs, but in theory, yes, they could have 2 to 3 different assignments, and if they want to make more revenue, but they won't be demanded. I think that's what's really going to come in the labor market. And one of the work I really study is Paul Romer's work, which is he won the Nobel Prize in economic science in 2018. He won it, Eric, for economic growth, okay, and he won it for climate change, and that's something which is called endogenous growth. And he did it literally. He won it because he said ideas, literally ideas, like my book, will create new economic growth and long-term growth as long as the idea person can be compensated. And so now if you look at the cryptocurrency world, these NFTs, non-fungible tokens, I mean, this is something people couldn't have envisioned. So economics, it's not so much the labor market, it's do people have enough, do they have enough compensation at the level they want to live to the quality of their life? And that's really what this comes down when you break that down. So Paul Romer's work is on my website. It's stuff that I've just been deep on, and it's endogenous growth, and it's part of my PhD as well as my focus.
And then just to tie it all together, and we can transition into some of the more questions coming in, where does AIEDC fit into that philosophy, right? If we're saying that is your vision of the future, where do you see your service offerings to artificial intelligence tying into that?
Because so going back, like as an example, using case study as an example of the local municipality, then they're able to scale their workforce appropriately. A lot of times, municipal and companies, they can't scale their workforce appropriately without that sort of headwinds that they know what's coming, a prediction and economic trends. So they're able to be efficient at where they're going to need certain people, not just like seasonal. Like if you look at it during the summer, municipalities can say, okay, if we're a beach city, we're going to need to hire more attendants because we'll have a big beach crowd. That's something they can predict pretty easy, but they can't predict the rest of the city. And so this will allow them to be able to scale their workforce appropriately and be able to do that ahead of time.
Perfect. Thanks for bringing it home on that one. And it looks like one of our attendees came in and joined the team with the direct investment. So thanks for coming in and adding to the AIEDC family there. So it's always good to see. Continuing along, I know we're getting closer to the end here, and LF, I'll give you a heads up. I am going to let you finish it at the end with a closing remarks. I'm not sure if you've seen my programming before, but I tend to allow these closing remarks where you get to say why now is the perfect time to go to Net Capital and invest and join the family. One of the attendees already figured it out. They don't need closing remarks. They get it. They've joined. But for the rest of them, we want to allow you to have that opportunity. But before we get there, some more questions coming in. What do you think about quantum computing, and how does that affect AIEDC?
Oh, you would ask that one. Did that come in from a question, or was that you?
That came in. No, that came in from the attendees.
Well, someone's trying to read my mind, because I'm already focused on a textbook right now, quantum machine learning. And one of the quantum artificial intelligence, one of the professors, I think my chairman knows him or someone very close to him. He wrote this in 2014, but that is the next level of iteration. I envision a world of, if we're going to get to AGI, it will involve quantum. And there's actually papers out there right now and research being done, and I'm doing research on my own now, of quantum machine learning. That's basically quantum AI. And you're going to get to a holy grail there. But just full disclosure too, see, I've been in the Bitcoin space since about 2010, but I don't own any of the currency, never purchased a currency. People always say, oh, that's why. You've written about this in 2011, you've been in it since 2010. I said, I've been in it before the technology. Because when you talk about quantum, you're talking about smart contracts, you're talking about, I just get excited. I mean, you're looking at a world you can't envision now, but that will allow processes to be placed on the ledger, a lot of operational things where we as humans can be free to do more what we want and engage creatively and make the money we want to make as much as we want to make. But how AIDC fits into that, that's our next, that's part of our evolutionary development, which is quantum machine learning.
Yeah, I promise I didn't plant it. This came in naturally. It's
Well,
right there.
I like that one. That gets me excited because I know it's coming. So yeah.
So safe to say you're bullish on it, and safe to say you think that quantum computing is complementary to your existing product service offerings through AIEDC.
Oh yeah, we'll integrate a version of that, because when you're looking at running large data sets or data sets coming in near to real time or edge computing, you would want quantum machine learning at that level. That's where that's going. So more and more data will be coming in from our devices as individuals as we keep becoming a more connected world. And as we become a connected world, you're just going to process more data. And at the quantum level, it will just do it faster.
Great. Well, thanks for that question. And some more questions coming in here. Let's transition a little bit over to cybersecurity. So kind of top of mind right now, you're talking about cloud computing, you're talking about storing data remotely, and we've just seen some pretty massive breaches, right? We've just seen some ransomware attacks on pipelines. We just saw another ransomware attack on a meat packing industry that'll affect the largest meat producer in the United States. So, what protections, what kind of infrastructure have you built out, or what infrastructure do you plan to build out to make sure that these remote data sets are protected?
Well, a lot of things you do is, and this is interesting because this is already offered, but a lot of it is iteration on there's two data components. One is cloud and the other is 5G. And so, like, if you ever look at like AWS, they do have the Pentagon and the government being part of their cloud services. Some of these hacks have been for more legacy systems, such as Microsoft Office, okay, and so forth. They haven't been some of these newer systems. And even if they go down, they're back up, or they're mirrored on the cloud and they're up within an hour or so. So when you're looking at it at the security level, 5G, cloud computing, and layer protection of there, of course, cybersecurity is always going to be the new threat, and you're always looking at these threat assessments. But there are several providers in the industry that we would probably partner with or utilize. I mean, they can just mask it, bring it right back up. I am really pleased. This isn't talked a lot about in the media, but there are a lot more significant providers in the cybersecurity, at least in the private sector. The problem is that the media doesn't discuss is a lot of these systems that they get in are legacy systems. They're older systems, and that's sort of where the easier entry points is. So when you're talking about quantum AI, smart contracts on inside of a crypto token, which is the blockchain technology, that's almost impossible to hack unless you had a state quantum computer. Like, it would have to be literally China or Russia, but a human couldn't do it. I mean, because it's processing too fast. So
yeah, and on that note, it should be mentioned that a lot of these breaches are coming from phishing schemes, which are more social elements, right? We're convincing, it's user error. We're convincing individuals to provide information. That's kind of that's its own subject. So no, I'm great. I wanted to address it. It's important. It's salient right now. So thanks for that, LS. Last couple pieces here. I know you started talking about potential exit strategies. You talked about potential acquisition. You haven't mentioned if there's an opportunity to maybe go public. You did mention that you have the team to be able to just operate the company and spin off revenue. So with your relationships, can we take a little bit more time and dig into some of the other exit opportunities and exit strategies?
Well, we could go public. I think I might have mentioned that earlier, maybe as a spec. Or just a traditional IPO. And we're always looking at what's the best opportunity, an exit strategy, because I think investors at least need to, in leading to your question of why now at this time and why invest. It's sort of that if you look at our build of where the iteration is, we're going public in the next 3 to 5 years, or a merger or something. Coming in now at the earlier stage where the share price is and the amount of shares that are issued gives it sort of the ability to invest now before the window closes, to be very honest and frank with you. We all hear the stories, wow, Lee, I wish I would have bought Apple stock, 20 years ago, or AWS. And so a lot of these opportunities are staring us in the face sometimes. I mean, it's for each individual to be comfortable with their investment focus. It is, you want to invest smartly and have a balanced portfolio and be prepared for losses, because that's the nature of investment. But you also look at where where the world's going, where the industries are going, and you get in early. It's just the early bird gets the worm. That's what Investor Place said when they gave us our recommendation. They literally said the early bird gets the worm. So I think why now? AI is a big trending services. There's very few companies with my team and my partnerships and connections that can execute. And that actually at this small level, I'm saying at a startup level, that already has trademark, service marks, patents in the financial area of machine intelligence, neural network database. So when some people say, LS, you actually own Mind. I say, yes. So, it's Mind Skynet, because it's a machine intelligence neural network database. It literally spells out Mind. We own the logo. So you might see that in the future, AI services powered by Mind. It's literally going to say AI services powered by M.I.N.D. And that's our trademark and our patents and service marks. So when you look at that kind of world, that kind of branding almost becomes like Visa. And that's part of our exit strategy as well.
All right. Well, thanks for the exit strategy. And I know you started tying into closing remarks, but I'm not sure if you wanted to add the kind of one more kind of on the head, on the nose closing remark piece. But it looks like we've wrapped up the questions coming in. So why is now the perfect time to go to netcapital.com and invest? And if you want to add a little tidbit about yourself, I know your son is considering both Stanford and MIT. And the question is, if he chooses MIT, does he still get to be your son?
Well, actually, he's now focused on Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech now. Told him to number 3, because Charles Isbell's over there at Georgia Tech. He's the dean of computer science for the PhD postgrad work. And when Lex Freeman's over at MIT. So I told him it's going to be cold. But if he wants to go to Georgia Tech, it's his choice. It's cheaper. I said it can be better, and you can be more around. Our people, just you can have more diversity when you go to school. But at the end of the day, why now? It literally, Eric, has to come down, in my opinion, because I'm sort of a libertarian at heart. Each person needs to make their choice. It's like cryptocurrency, and it's about forecasting the future. So I'm the person, again, my book, and I'm not plugging the book. I don't even make that much money, like $2 from it. When I wrote that book, I put in the book, and you have a copy of it, Eric, I predicted where crypto and AI and cryptocurrencies would go. And I said they'll create a new economic order, sort of. Bitcoin was $880 when I published the book in January 24th, 2017. You can look up the charts. Even if it's at 30,000 now, and it was at 50,000, and I don't even own the coin, I'm looking at the technology. I can see the technology trend. I say AIEDC will be the same. And just like I wrote in that book then, because at sometimes it's not just speculative. When enough technologies come together, they create sort of the convergence or singularity. And we're approaching sort of a convergence now of where technology and cloud and 5G, these things are all kind of converging, okay? Just like when the iPhone came out in 2007, which a lot of people forget now, that was the convergence of the smartphone with glass, because Samsung followed for Android phones. But before that, you were using your little finger, right, to text, or you had a BlackBerry or something. So people couldn't envision this swipe world, the world where we swipe everything now, but Steve Jobs did. So I would just compare us, no pun intended, we're a smaller iteration, but at the end of the day, I would compare us to like an Apple or a Facebook. It's got to be, you have something defensible, you have to have the right team, you have to have the right sort of knowledge of the services, defensible with patents or services marks and trademarks and so forth. And then you have to know where the trends are going. So my history, I think one of the easiest things to point to today is like, okay, why is this guy smarter than the next guy, or why does he think he's smarter? Just look at the published day of the book and look at what Bitcoin was. And then say, well, maybe that was a pretty great guess if it was a guess, but I put it in writing back then. So I see the same convergence coming with AIEDC and what we'll be able to do in the AI services as AI as a service market, which I literally say will replace, for the most part, software as a service. And that's led to a lot of billionaires and millionaires, or for investors, people who have invested the money are now millionaires. And like, you know, even people who bought Tesla stock way back were better with it. So that's why.
Well, I do appreciate you hanging out with me, LS. I always enjoy the time. You're always really insightful. You have the wisdom, and thanks for sharing that with the attendees here. I want to thank all the participants for joining. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and engaging with the topic. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next one. LS, always a pleasure. Everybody, please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was just wrapping up. Actually, before I do that, I'm glad that you asked what was that. I forgot to mention, as always, this is being recorded. It will be uploaded to NetCapital's YouTube account. I've just added the link to that into the chat. So you can go directly there. You can watch anything that you might have missed. You can review any topics that we went through quickly. And of course, you can share that liberally with anybody that you think might be interested in potentially joining the AIEDC family. So with all that being said, thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks, LS.
Thank you, Eric. Bye.
Bye now.